The lesson we're going to do today is classifying shapes, and we're mainly going to be focusing on quadrilaterals, which, as we talked about in the last lesson, is four-sided shapes, but we're also going to touch on triangles, which means they have it's a three-sided shape. So we're going to start with squares and rectangles. Both squares and rectangles have right angles, meaning the corners of them are 90-degree angles. So that is how they are similar. They are also both four-sided shapes. The difference between a square and a rectangle is a square has four equal sides, and we show that by putting a slash through each of the sides that are congruent. And a rectangle has two pairs of congruent sides. So if these two sides are congruent, we're going to put one slash through them. And when the other two sides are congruent, we're going to put two slashes through them. Rhombuses and parallelograms are similar to squares and rectangles in the sense that a rhombus is a parallelogram. However, a parallelogram is not a rhombus. Rhombuses are more specific. They have one extra thing to them. And like a square, the big thing that makes it different than everything else is all the sides of a rhombus are equal to each other, where a parallelogram has two pairs of congruent sides. The thing that they also share in common is that they both have two pairs of parallel sides. And to show that two sides are parallel, you put an arrow like that. And when those two sides are parallel, we put two arrows. Remember, parallel means that the two sides never cross. So if we're trying to show that two sides are parallel and we draw a line, it means if they went forever and ever, they wouldn't cross. Same thing with these two sides, and the parallelogram is going to be the same. Trapezoids are a little trickier because sometimes they could be mistaken as a parallelogram just because you see the slanted sides, but they are different than a parallelogram because trapezoids only have one pair of parallel sides. They will never ever have two. So if we're looking at this first figure here, we've got this side, if I extended that forever and ever, and this side forever and ever, neither of those would cross. However, if I did the same thing where I extended this side and this side, they would eventually cross if we continued those lines. Same thing for this middle one, and the drawing isn't perfect, but if I were to extend that side and that side, those would never cross. So there's your one pair. If we look at the other one, those two sides will cross eventually up top. Lastly, same idea here. If I extend these two forever, they will cross. But if I extend these, those two will never cross. So each of them only has one pair of parallel sides, where just a recap for a parallelogram, that looks like this. So they're different because this one, if I extend it forever, those sides will not cross. Same thing with those two sides. So trapezoids only have one pair of parallel sides. Kites, there's not a lot to a kite besides the fact that it's a quadrilateral and it has two pairs of congruent sides. So we've got this side is congruent to that one, and they share an angle right here. And same thing, this side is congruent to that one, and they share this bottom angle there. Finally, triangles are three-sided shapes. Tri means three, and you, for the most part, only have you have several triangles to choose from. A quadrilateral or an equilateral triangle is a triangle where all the sides are equal to each other. Isosceles has two equal sides, and that also means those two angles are congruent, and those are called base angles. Scalene triangles have no sides the same, and a right triangle has a right angle in it.